Good day and buenos dias to all of our CCoP members from across Canada. I'm Lee Pennock and I'm speaking to you from sunny Saskatoon. And I'm pleased to introduce my co-host for today's meeting, Canadian Company of Pilgrims Vice President, Len Polsky. Len, thanks for being here. And maybe you can let our listeners know where here is for you.
Sure, thanks, Lee. I'm calling in today from sometimes sunny Calgary. Hello to everybody who's joining us today.
I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of the many spaces from which we gather today. As pilgrims, we know that the paths that we walk take us in the footsteps of the many generations of pilgrims who went before us. In the same spirit, we acknowledge that wherever we are in this country, we gather in places where generations of Indigenous peoples have sought and continue to seek to walk gently on the land. We aspire to a new relationship with all of our relations in all generations, one based in mutual hospitality and respect. And with that, welcome to the CCoP Annual General Meeting for the year ending December 31st, 2021.
This is our second year using this platform. To make the experience as painless as possible, we're going to start just by walking through some of the things that you see on your screen. So first, the only people whose faces you'll see are our speakers or panelists. Everybody else's microphones and cameras are off, but you'll be able to ask questions and of course to vote. More about that in a minute. If you hover your mouse along the bottom of the Zoom window on your screen, you should see some icons. One of those is something called Q&A. This is the place where you can ask questions or make comments. Just click on Q&A and a window will pop up where you can type your question. Notice there's a scroll bar on the right side of the Q&A window.
We've got an enthusiastic team of volunteers who are monitoring the Q&A screens. There are a lot of people on this call, so we're going to ask that you keep your questions and your comments relevant to the motion or the topic that's on the floor. And we also apologize in advance if we can't get to all of the questions within the time constraints of our meeting. If we don't get to your question, we will contact you after the meeting with an answer. If your questions have to do with how to use the meeting technology, you can contact our IT support at the email address that's up on your screen. And our video conferencing guru, Renee, will help you out.
As you saw in the meeting agenda, we do have some motions to be put before the meeting. When we get to the motions, a window will pop up automatically on your screen. You'll have about 20 seconds to cast a vote on each motion. Your votes are all anonymous. What we're going to do now is put up a little test poll just so you can try it out. So the poll has been launched. You'll see that there are, in fact, a couple of questions there. Please respond to them both. And for this, we'll give you a little extra time because it's our trial run. When you're done, click on Submit. Remember, there's a scroll bar on the right. You may need to scroll down to answer the second question and to find the Submit bar. Tim Boreham, our Chief Returning Officer, how are we doing with the poll?
We're still getting people answering, so maybe we'll give it another few seconds.
Okay, sure.
Okay, let's end the poll and the results. I'm just going to show people the results here. You'll see that on the first question, we had 78 people, 86% said Camino Francés, and 30 people, 33% said Camino Português. On the second question, the favorite Camino, 51% said Camino Francés and 10% said Camino Português.
Thank you very much, Tim. Len, maybe this will be a good time to explain to our members how we handle abstentions.
Sure. If on any motion you check the box that says abstain, then your vote will not be counted in determining whether or not the motion passes. Only votes cast in favor or in opposition are counted when we determine if there's a majority or not.
Great. I think that takes us through most of the housekeeping items relating to how do we use the video conferencing features. Just a few more points about the program today. We've planned the business portion of this AGM to be run or to run for less than an hour. And then following that, we'll have a brief 5-minute bio break. And then we'll be joined by our special guest, Johnny Walker, who joins us from Spain today and who will treat us to some reflections on the theme of pilgrimage, the Camino, and hope, followed by a chance for you to ask questions of our guest. I know it's going to be a wonderful discussion, and I hope you're able to stay for it.
We're recording this meeting for all members who are unable to attend, and we'll make Johnny Walker's presentation available on our YouTube channel after today's event as well.
So with that, let's get started. And the first order of business is to confirm that we have quorum, and I see that we have 115 participants in attendance. And so since our quorum is 12, we're pretty comfortable there, and I'll call us to order.
Even though we are an organization that exists to serve English-speaking Canadians, we have partnerships with many different organizations in Spain and other Camino-related organizations around the world.
Some of you might know that we have the honor of having the Spanish ambassador to Canada, His Excellency Senor Alfredo Martinez Serrano, as our honorary patron. His Excellency is enthusiastic about the Camino. He has walked the Camino, and we're delighted that he brings his love for the Camino to his role as our honorary patron. The ambassador recorded a greeting for us to play for you at this meeting. Unfortunately, I've been advised we're having some technical issues playing that video. And so we apologize to you and to His Excellency for this, but we will be posting his remarks on the homepage of our website. And we'll try to get the video up on the CCoP YouTube channel as soon if we're able to do that. And it's well worth a listen. His Excellency has been a pilgrim on the Camino himself, and he has some very gracious things to say about our organization and about Canada, and also about the lessons that he has learned along the Camino. We're also pleased to have received greetings for this meeting from our sister association in Quebec. Joanne Morin is the president of the Association du Québec à Compostelle. She is also a member of CCoP, and she brings greetings to our meeting today.
Bonjour, mon nom est Joanne Morin, présidente de l'Association du Québec à Compostelle. Je tiens à remercier Léa de me permettre de vous adresser ces quelques mots. Nos deux organisations ont le même objectif, soutenir et aider toute personne désireuse d'aller marcher sur les chemins de Compostelle. Je tiens à souligner le travail colossal que tous les bénévoles de la CCoP réalisent jour après jour pour le mieux-être des pèlerins du Canada. C'est avec plaisir aujourd'hui que je me fais la porte-parole des membres du conseil d'administration de notre association pour saluer M. l'ambassadeur d'Espagne. Je sais que M. Martinez Serrano a un attachement particulier pour les chemins de Compostelle et je le remercie à l'avance du soutien qu'il offrira à nos deux organisations. Chers membres CCoP, veuillez accepter l'expression de mes meilleures salutations.
Lovely. Thank you, Joanne. I know you're in the audience today. Members, you have a slide of the agenda before you, or you will in a moment. And the motion to adopt the agenda is moved by Renee Dupuy-Leon of New Brunswick, and it's seconded by Ingrid Folkers of Prince Edward County in Ontario. Before I call the question to adopt this agenda, we need to know whether any of our members have anything to add to it or any requests for reordering.
So another piece of housekeeping here. If you do have anything, you should type the question mark into the Q&A box and hit send. That'll tell us that we need to give you some time to type your full question before we go on. So just type an actual question mark, hit send, and then type your actual question and hit send again. We'll pause for about 20 seconds in case there are requests for changes to the agenda right now.
Any questions, Wendy?
No questions have been received, Lee.
Thank you. So the motion is to adopt the agenda as circulated, and you'll have about 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, we have 100% approval for this motion.
Thank you, Tim. I guess that means it's carried. So I declare the motion to be carried, and we'll move on to the minutes.
The motion is to adopt the minutes of last year's meeting. It's moved by Lauren Rendell of Calgary and seconded by Lisa Mennel of Vancouver. Before I call the question, are there any errors or omissions that anybody sees in the minutes? If so, let us know. You have a question by submitting a question mark in the Q&A box, hitting send, and then typing your question or your correction. Hit submit again. We'll give you a bit of time for that, 20 seconds.
Any questions, Wendy?
No questions have been received, Lee.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to adopt the minutes of the meeting of February 20th, 2021 as circulated. And now you'll have about 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, we have 92% approval and 0 opposition.
Thank you, Tim. I declare that motion to be carried. We'll move on to the report of the president, and there is a full written report on our website, and which was available to you prior to the meeting. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we will talk about a few highlights. And of course, the most obvious thing to say about the past year is that for all but a couple of brief months in the fall, the Camino was effectively closed to Canadians.
You will not be surprised to know that the number of pilgrims on the Camino overall dropped hugely. In 2019, almost 350,000 pilgrims from all over the world arrived in Santiago to claim Compostela. Just over 5,000 of those were Canadian. And what's interesting is that the proportion of Canadians on the Camino had been steady at about 1.5% for many, many years. The next year, there were only 54,000, so 350,000 out to 54,000 pilgrims, and only 153 of them were Canadian. That's not really surprising because there was a travel advisory in effect for the last 9 months of the year. If we look at 2021, the number of pilgrims has started to climb, but most of those were European, and particularly Spanish. Only 558 Canadians received the Compostela in 2021, or on average about 1 or 2 a day.
So I'm sure another thing our members might be wondering is, how did our association weather this downturn in pilgrim activity? Did we sell any new memberships this year? Are we still solvent? Well, as you will have read in the financial report, yes, we weathered COVID pretty well. Our membership has certainly gone down during the pandemic, but as you'll see from this slide, our total membership is still pretty healthy at over 2,000 members. And in fact, both the annual and the lifetime membership sales have been better than we dared to hope. So the annual ones are what you see in blue, and the lifetime memberships are in yellow. Lifetime membership is a good news story for our association. You'll hear when the treasurer gives her report that we have invested our lifetime membership revenues, and that they've given us really strong investment returns and a steady, reliable source of income to help to keep us sustainable, even in times like these. Part of our strength is that we're an organization that relies mostly on volunteers, in fact, entirely on volunteers, and we don't have a physical space. So there are no rent and utilities to pay. And because of all these things, we are in a solid financial position.
Thanks to the generosity of our members, we've also been able to make even more contributions to the support of the Camino than we've ever done before. Our Keep the Camino Alive campaign has been really popular with the members, and so far we've raised more than $30,000 in direct contributions from members. You'll see on this slide that there are a lot of green stars. Each one of those stars represents one of the almost 30 different pilgrim-related businesses on the Camino that we've been able to help so far. The campaign will continue at least through the current whole year of 2022. Speaking of donations and fundraising, our members who were at the AGM last year might recall there was a question about why we're not a charitable organization. We committed to investigating that possibility. We did that, and after consulting with the tax accountant, we came to the conclusion that this wouldn't be the right move for the CCoP right now. Some of the main reasons were that it would require us to really realign the focus of the organization, and it would restrict our ability to send donations out of the country. There would also have been some significant costs associated with the application. Essentially, the drawbacks outweighed the potential benefits. If you'd like more detail about any of that, feel free to send us an email and we'll provide you with more background information.
Another major project that the board and chapter coordinators have been working on this year is to develop a strategic plan for our organization. Our board chapter liaison, Ellie Witzke, has been co-lead of the strategic planning project, and I'm going to invite her now to say a few words about how that project is unfolding. Ellie.
All right. Thank you, Lee. This past year, a strong focus of the CCoP was developing our strategic plan. We have an excellent team representing both board members and chapter coordinators across the country. This framework, which includes our mission statement, our share of love of the Camino, inspiring and enabling others on their way, our vision statement, which is to be a vibrant and an inclusive Camino community, and our values statement of being open, generous, and hospitable, and also the strategic objectives and the operational objectives. They were all approved by the board in July. And since then, we've had a task group working on the Develop Our Organization objective, which included the survey that went out to the membership. We're now into phase 3 as we continue to develop our objectives. If you're interested at all in helping develop them, we're looking at developing the attract and connect to those who are interested in the Camino, support those preparing for a Camino, foster our Camino community, and to support the Camino. We'll be doing some short-term committee work and would love to hear from you. You could simply email the secretary@santiago.ca or myself, Ellie@santiago.ca. Back to you, Len.
Thanks. We'd now like to introduce Lauren Rendell, the woman who keeps us organized and makes sure there's a faithful record of our discussions and decisions. Lauren's both our national secretary and a coordinator of the Calgary chapter. Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Len. Communication is the word that comes to mind when reviewing 2021. Information sharing and discussion were even more important as social distancing and travel advisories continued. So the secretary became responsible for communication, always asking the question, who needs to know? Our Zoom bookings quadrupled with increased board and chapter meetings. Our monthly board meeting highlights are now shared with the chapter coordinators. And we had 3 joint chapter coordinator board meetings. There was lots of inspiring work being done, which was great to share. So thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. We're now going to invite Ellie Witzke back to present her report as Chapter Liaison Officer. Ellie.
Well, I have the great privilege of being the chapter liaison this year. My role consists of connecting with coordinators across the country and liaisoning with the board. Now, the CCoP is very blessed with excellent leadership with our 18 diverse chapters. Honestly, cream of the crop people, and a big shout out to our chapter coordinators who continue to support those interested in the Camino. Now, some chapters were very quiet during this year due to the pandemic and are now at a place of reimagining chapter activities for the future. Other chapters continued with a few outdoor activities, which included walking programs or just connecting outside. But as we all know, Zoom has taken off, and through the CCoP website events calendar, pilgrims can now join not only their local chapters, but chapters across Canada for Zoom meetings. Guest speakers, practical tips, roundtable discussions, and sharing between pilgrims keep the pilgrim engaged and excited to return to the Camino. So a big thank you to the coordinators as you continue to support your local pilgrims.
Thank you, Ellie. We have a motion to receive the reports of the President, Secretary, and Chapter Liaison, and that motion is moved by David Brown of Kelowna, and it's seconded by Loretta Ray of Hamilton. Before I call the question, are there any questions about these reports? And if there are, just type in your question mark. You know the drill by now, and we'll give you a few seconds in case you have some questions.
No questions have been received, Lee.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. So the motion is to receive the reports of the President, Secretary, and Chapter Liaison Officer as circulated. And you have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, we have 98% approval and 1% oppose.
Thank you, Tim. I declare that motion to be carried.
We are now going to invite Barbara Smith, our treasurer, to present the financial reports and budget. Barb.
Thank you, Len. Today I'll be presenting the condensed version of our financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021. These statements are provided on the members section of our website in more detail. The financial statements and the budget being presented have been reviewed and approved by our board of directors at their meeting on January 20th, 2022. Just to give you some insight on how finances are handled at the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, our financials are presented throughout the year at both our officers and board meetings to keep them up to date on the progress of our organization throughout the year in order to make financial decisions going forward. To further enhance our financial oversight, we have a finance committee that focuses on the finance side of CCoP and a separate investment committee that manages the funds held in our lifetime investment fund. The investment committee is especially important as they manage a good portion of our assets that will be used to fund operations in the years to come. If you have reviewed the statements on our website, you will notice that we have made some changes to our statement of operations and have separated the various funds managed by CCoP: operations, lifetime investment fund, and the donation program. The new format allows for our members and our board to see the impact of revenue and expenses and allows us to focus on each fund separately. The goal is to provide good, transparent information to our membership. In the next few slides, I'd like you to please note that the donation program is reported on separately and is not included in our annual budget. A summary of the Keep the Camino Alive campaign is provided later in my report. We are treating this as a standalone program with the intention of distributing all funds collected to businesses supporting the Camino. The first slide summarizes the revenues for 2020 and our budget and actual for 2021. You will notice that our annual membership sales exceed our budget by 4,110 and lifetime membership sales by 5,400. Last year, we set our budget fairly low given the uncertain times. It is thanks to our members that continued to renew their memberships or upgrade the lifetime memberships that we achieved these sales numbers. However, these revenues are significantly down from 2020 and even more from 2019. Impacting our sales is the fact that our membership numbers have dropped over the past 2 years. As for credential and badge sales, we had budgeted $2,500, but our sales for both of these were only 1,770 combined. Our sales were lower than budgeted, therefore it shows a negative variance of 500 and 230 for the credentials and badges respectively. Overall, given the year, we are fairly pleased with our revenue for 2021. The investment and interest revenue of $4,368 refers to dividends earned on our lifetime investment fund. This revenue is derived from funds that are invested in ETFs that earn monthly dividends. As the lifetime investment fund grows, this will provide a steady stream of income that will help to support our operations. Dividends earned over the past year averaged almost 7%. Expenses. This summary outlines the main category of our expenses during the year. Knowing that 2021 might be a tough year, we scaled back on our expenses that we could control, and some costs were avoided due to volunteer board members taking on tasks that were previously contracted out. Product expenses were minimal. This line item pertains to the cost of mailing our credentials and badges. Most badges mailed out were from the donation program, which is accounted for separately. One of the two areas we had an increase from budget was the general administrative costs. Part of the increase was due to our payment fees being higher than expected as a result of increased membership sales. Also included in this budget line was approximately $2,000 paid to a professional accounting firm to file our corporate taxes. In the past year, a decision was made to contract an accounting firm to do the taxes. This decision was made after the budget was approved, so it is not part of our 2021 budget. Having a professional firm do the taxes gives us that added sense of security. As you will see for the expense line national IT, we had significant savings. Previously, some of these costs were contracted out, and in 2021, we budgeted a significant amount to make changes to our website. Fortunately, we have some volunteer board members that have exceptional IT skills, and all these expenses were done at no cost. Therefore, we spent $4,649 less than anticipated. In the category chapter support, we had no cost during the year, but we have accrued $6,800 to be directed to support for our chapters in the way of a national meeting for our board and chapter coordinators or other initiatives because we want to put emphasis on our chapters going forward, being they are the future of our organization. Contributions to the Camino for 2021 refers to the annual donation we made to 2 albergues in Spain. All other contributions made to the Camino were done through our donation program. The financial summary puts together the revenue expenses, adding in the unrealized capital gain earned on our investments in the lifetime investment fund. You can see that there's a capital gain of $9,783, which had a significant impact on our surplus for the year. Our budget planned for a surplus of $3,971, and we achieved a surplus of $21,772. The difference is mainly due to two areas: higher membership sales than we anticipated, and the unrealized capital gain. The $21,772 surplus is broken down into three categories. $3,533 is operations, which we use to pay our monthly expenses. $8,455 of the surplus is directed to the Lifetime Investment Fund, which is used to support operations in the future. And these funds are allocated over a 25-year period, or 4% per year. And the third category, the unrealized capital gain, is an adjustment to the current value on these investments at year end. And until these investments are actually sold, these gains are not yet realized. Our Lifetime Investment Fund earned dividends plus an unrealized capital gain, achieving a total return on investment of 21.44% over the past year. The investment committee did a tremendous job investing our funds for a great return that will benefit CCoP for years to come. As mentioned earlier, the Keep the Camino Alive donation program is accounted for separately from our operations and is treated as a standalone program. To date, we have collected over $30,000 from our members through this campaign. Last year, we allocated $7,500 towards this program, and after payment fees, we had $37,563 available for contributions to businesses. To date, we have distributed $31,685 to businesses, and we have $4,106 remaining to be distributed in the future. We are very grateful for our generous donations from our members. This is outstanding and has really helped these businesses stay afloat in these very trying times. That leads us to our statement of financial position, which shows us a snapshot of the assets and liabilities as at December 31st for each of the respective years. At year end, we had $40,000 in our checking account, which is used to fund our expenses throughout the year. The $10,374 accumulated in the savings account is the buildup of lifetime memberships sold during the year. This balance is cleared out after year end and a portion used to fund operations, and the remaining will go to the Lifetime Investment Fund. The BMO, which is the BMO Investment Fund. You'll notice that the BMO Investment Fund has grown from $45,199 at the end of 2020 to $78,781 at the end of 2021. Overall, that is an increase of $33,582. So it is significant. This is made up of $19,440 that was transferred from the previous year's lifetime membership sales and was directed to this fund. $9,783 of that would be unrealized capital gains, and the remaining $4,358 is from dividends earned over the past year. Our BMO investment fund is focused on long-term investments in a diverse set of ETFs that will preserve our capital and give us a reasonable return. These funds are focused on risk-adjusted, high-yield dividend income that will be used to fund our operations. Keep in mind that the intention is for the fund to be allocated to operations over a 25-year period, so we can expect this to grow over time. Our lifetime membership fund is a key part of our financial plan, designed to last a pilgrim's lifetime of approximately 25 years. As I mentioned earlier, we did achieve a return on investment of 21.44% over the past year, including the unrealized capital gains. These assets are managed by our investment committee, made up of 2 board members, and thanks to them, they have done a stellar job of achieving very good returns. The accruals and liabilities of $7,060 pertains to funds accrued for our chapter support and a small amount for outstanding expenses. The budget presented here in the shaded area at the far right is for the upcoming year, 2022, and compares to the actuals in the budget for the previous year of 2021. We are anticipating a slight increase in the sales starting mid to late 2022, hopeful that travel begins to open up. As pilgrims are allowed to travel, credential and badges sales will also pick up. Investment income increases due to the lifetime investment fund increasing. The budget line in the revenue other income shows an increase in the 2022 budget due to affiliate commissions expected from the Trip Merchant supported walk, assuming that this will still go ahead. As for the budget expenses, we are anticipating that we will have to replenish our stock of badges and credentials, and therefore we have a $4,000 $1,000 budget there, and that will replenish our stock for 2 to 3 years. In our general administrative line, you'll see an increase, and that is due to $2,000 for travel that we hadn't planned for in the last couple of years, and an additional $3,600 for professional accounting fees. This totals an additional $5,600 from the prior year. I would like to make note that the accounting fees of $3,600 in this budget line item relate to $600 to file our corporate taxes. An additional $3,000 has been budgeted should we require a review engagement. This is budgeted, but we may not have to incur this cost. The $3,000 for the review engagement would be required if our membership does not waive the appointment of a public accountant. We are required to represent this option to our membership as part of the bylaws. After my report, there will be a vote on the waiver to determine whether we will be incurring this expense. This is a significant expense and accounts for approximately 10% of our overall expenses. If the waiver is approved, we will not have to incur this expense, and we will then direct these funds to other Camino-related initiatives. The budget for chapter support and contributions to the Camino will be no change from 2021. Overall, we are planning a surplus of $6,500 for 2022, of which $6,355 will fall under the lifetime fund and be directed in that category, and another $145 towards operations. That concludes my financial report.
Thank you so much, Barb. The motion to receive the report of the treasurer is moved by Barbara Smith of Saskatoon, and it's seconded by David Duncan of Toronto. And before I call the question, are there any questions for Barb? And if you do have questions, you know the drill by now.
No questions. Whoop, wait a minute. I'm expecting an incoming question.
Okay, thanks. We'll wait a minute for that then.
There is a request to retell the need for an accountant.
Oh, okay. And that actually will be coming up when we put that motion to the membership. We have some information to give you about that. So it's going to be covered in a couple of minutes. Accepting the report of the treasurer does not affect that waiver. The waiver is going to be voted on in a separate motion, and we will be presenting some information about that. Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to receive the report of the treasurer as presented. And you have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, we have 98% approval of that motion and none opposed.
Thank you, Tim. So I declare that motion to be carried. And we'll move on to the topic that the member was asking about, the waiver of the appointment of a public accountant. And I'll call on Len to explain that a little bit.
Great, thanks. So this motion is one that we're required to put to the members every year under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. If the members are confident of the integrity of the financial statements, the act allows them, you, to waive the appointment of a public accountant. This waiver has to be approved unanimously by those who choose to vote, which means there can't be any votes against the motion or it fails, and that would lead to us appointing the public accountant. Our financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. They're reviewed by the Finance Committee, comprising our former Vice President, the Treasurer, and another board member. The committee includes a retired CPA and a retired CMA. Our financial statements and supporting documents are reviewed every month by the officers, and the financial statements are presented and approved by the board quarterly, including the year-end financial statements. Because the engagement of a public accountant would represent a significant expense to the organization relative to the annual budget, as Barb indicated, something in the order of 10%, the board unanimously recommended that we seek your agreement, our members, to waive appointing a public accountant. We want to be very sure that we explain carefully what it is you're voting for and what the implications are. So without the motion, the act requires us to appoint a public accountant. If all of you who vote support the motion, then we will not hire an external public accountant. So that's if the motion passes. And if even one person opposes, that means we will appoint one and incur that cost. As Barb explained, the proposed budget includes an amount set aside to retain an accountant. If the requirement is waived, though, that amount, like Barb said, would be available for use in other initiatives.
The motion to waive the appointment of a public accountant is moved by Jim Rondo of Victoria, and it's seconded by Kevin McKinney of Fredericton. And before I call the question, do you have any questions about this motion, and is this clear to you?
There are some questions coming.
Thank you.
Historically, has the need to appoint an accountant been waived?
It has been waived every year that we've had this motion before the members, yes.
Does the board feel confident to continue financial statements as they are?
I invite others to weigh in, but my response would be that it was a unanimous motion from the board to request this waiver, and so to me that would indicate confidence in going forward the way that we have. Others might want to say something.
Yeah, no, I'll just echo that. Absolutely. The skill that the financial committee brings to this aspect of the operations is without any concern, and we're in a good financial position as a result of it. And we have no doubt that the financials are an accurate representation of our financial situation.
The report indicated that the use of a public accountant provided comfort to the board and the finance committee. This would lead me to think that it may be needed. Would the organization or the board want this every 5 years?
The motion has to be put annually to the members. And so we couldn't, for example, pass a motion that said that we would do it once, but not next year or the year after, or the year after that. We need to put the motion to the members every year. And so we can only anticipate this year in appointing a public accountant.
And the fact that we do it every year should not be seen as an indication of any concern. The legislation simply requires us to do it every year and to give the members that option.
There is a note from a former treasurer saying, please approve unanimously.
Thank you. Any other questions, Wendy?
I think that's all there are, yes.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to waive the appointment of a public accountant, and we'll put that poll up for you and let you vote.
Madam Chair, the motion before the board, the waiver of the the motion, the waiver of the appointment of the public accountant is approved by 97%. There are no in opposition.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you to our members. With those votes, that motion is carried.
And now we would like to introduce Wendy Lawley, our past president and the chair of our nominations committee, and ask her to present her committee's report, the report of the nominations committee. Wendy.
Thank you very much, Len. The CCoP board is comprised of 13 directors from across Canada. 2 of these will have completed their terms as of this AGM. David Duncan in Toronto, who's been instrumental in initiating the strategic planning process this year. And I have served 2 3-year terms as president and past president, and I am no longer eligible to run again. Therefore, there are and 2 people are wishing to serve a second term. That's Lee Pennock and Lauren Rendell. Therefore, 4 candidates are required to fill the vacancies, and we have 9 ongoing board members. There were 4 members of the nominations committee. We met on Zoom multiple times between July 2021 and January 2022. Our search for candidates was carried out by emails to all CCoP members. We contacted chapter coordinators for suggestions from within their chapters, and also contacted some individuals who'd been identified as potential nominees. And a notice went out in the September Pilgrim Footprints CCoP newsletter. Our discussions included determining our wish list of qualifications needed on the board at this time. Chapter or hospitalero experience and previous board experience were considered to be very important, as well as appropriate skills in other areas such as communications, volunteer management, technology, or business systems. And we do try to retain geographic balance on our board as well. So expressions of interest were received from 8 candidates. 4 of these withdrew, mostly for personal reasons or because they decided that the role wasn't a good fit for them at this time. These 4 candidates were then considered. Their full biographies are available on the CCoP website with the AGM materials. Hope you had a chance to look at those. All are experienced pilgrims and lifetime members of CCoP. All have served as chapter coordinators and have board or committee experience within and outside CCoP. Lee Pennock of Saskatoon is seeking a second 3-year term, having served as president for the past 3 years. She was a founding member and co-coordinator of the Saskatoon chapter and served on our bylaws committee in 2018. Lauren Rendell of Calgary, also seeking a second term, having been first elected to the board in 2019 when she took on the role of the board secretary. As an experienced pilgrim and hospitalero, she's been active in the Calgary chapter for many years and has served as co-coordinator there for the past 2 years. Donna Coots from Vancouver has discovered that the Camino is an incurable addiction since her first walk in 2011, and she's walked multiple Caminos since then. And as co-coordinator of the Vancouver chapter since 2016, she's grown it into a vibrant and active entity. She's currently serving on the Strategic Planning Committee. Tom Friesen of London, Ontario, is one of the original chapter leaders for CCoP in Canada. As a hospitalero trainer, he's been engaged with many chapters across Canada, and this role has also enabled him to build many valuable international relationships. He was also co-author of the Hospitalero Training Manual, which has been shared around the world. The committee reviewed all the applications to ensure that the nominees were bringing appropriate skills and geographic diversity to fill the board vacancies. After assessing their qualifications, the nominations committee unanimously recommended to the board that the names of all 4 nominees be forwarded as candidates for the board of directors at this AGM. The board approved this recommendation at its January 20th, 2022 meeting. Last year at the AGM, the members elected the candidates to the board. However, new bylaws that were approved at last year's AGM allowed that if the number of candidates is equal to the number of vacant positions, then the candidates may be declared elected by acclamation, since it would serve no purpose to conduct a vote just to confirm that 4 candidates fill 4 positions. The unanimous recommendation of the nominations committee has been accepted by the board, clearing the way for these candidates being acclaimed to the positions of directors. This concludes my report. As I leave the board after 6 years, I'm heartened that there's a very strong team in place to take us into the next years. Thank you.
You'd think I know to unmute myself by now. Thank you, Wendy. And before we move to questions, I would just like to say a big thanks to both of our outgoing board members for their service. Wendy has chaired the nominations committee for the last 3 years as past president, and she spent 3 years before that as our president. David served 3 years as a board member and was the driving force behind our strategic planning initiative. And we're going to miss both of you.
Are there any questions from the membership about the nominations committee report? Anybody?
There are no question marks. There are no questions. There is only one comment. Thank you to our outgoing board members. Your hard work is appreciated.
Right.
Thank you, Mary.
And yeah, we echo that as well.
Yes.
Following up on what Wendy has said in her report, since the number of candidates matches the number of open positions on the board, these candidates have been elected by acclamation. We are very pleased to welcome our 4 candidates as members of the CCoP Board of Directors. Now I'd like to take a moment, if I may, to thank Lee for all of her contributions as president of the CCoP. We're not losing her altogether, of course, since she's just agreed to serve another term as director, but we are losing her as president, of which she's been for the last 4 years. Whenever somebody accepts the reins to lead an organization, they leave their mark on it in 1,000 ways, big and small. Lee has been no exception. And on her watch, we've overhauled the bylaws, launched a comprehensive strategic plan, and reinvigorated our relationships with chapters and chapter coordinators, to name just a few of the things we've accomplished. She passes the torch to her successor with the CCoP in great financial shape, and we've breathed new life into our relations with our international counterparts. None of that happens without great leadership, and Lee has demonstrated that in abundance. Lee, we're looking forward to your continued input as a director. You have been a great colleague and have become a good friend to many of us. For all of that and all the contributions you made as president, we say thank you so much.
Thank you, Len, for all those nice things you just said. What an amazing opportunity it's been for me to serve as president of the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. This is the best group of volunteers and pilgrims that a person could ever hope to spend time with. And now that I've been elected for another 3-year term, I can look forward to a new role on the board as past president, and that will be fun. So, speaking of past presidents, I just want to take a moment to pay tribute to the person who preceded me in this role and who has been my very wise mentor, guide, and friend over the last 3 years. Wendy, would you please turn your camera on? Wendy Lawley to me is like one of those solid granite, grounded, reliable, kind of unassuming waymarkers that you see along the Camino and that can always be counted on to point you in the right direction. Her history with the Canadian Company of Pilgrims goes back over 20 years, and she cares deeply about this organization. 6 years ago, she started a term as president with the promise to build on Austin Cook's legacy. And over her 3 years as president and her 3 years as past president, she accomplished a list of things that are too numerous to list here, but they include a new constitution and bylaws, new organizational structure, new membership database. But you can't evaluate a presidency just by lists. And what's more important than what you do is how you do it. Wendy is a consummate servant leader. She's always self-effacing and always turning the spotlight on others. And she provides inspiration and encouragement, and she models the true pilgrim spirit. She can be counted on to lend a sympathetic ear and also to pitch in. Wendy loves talking about the Camino, and she always talks about keeping the flame of our organization alive. And in so many ways, Wendy, you have been the spark that has lit the Camino flame for CCoP members and volunteers for the last 20 years. So I'd like to invite the rest of the panelists on this call to turn their videos on for a minute. And to Wendy, from all of us, thank you so much. We will miss you.
Thank you.
We'll miss you.
Bon
That's
Camino,
amazing.
Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
Buen Camino.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such kind things you said, Lee. And I've had a great time working with everybody. It's been fun. I'm going to miss you all too.
But we know where to find you.
I can still hide in some committees in the background.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you very
Well,
much, everyone.
That concludes the formal portion of our agenda. And look at that, exactly 12 o'clock, or exactly on the hour. No other business was identified when we approved the agenda. And so our agenda having been completed, I declare the annual general meeting to be adjourned, but please don't go away. We're going to take a 5-minute bio break. And then I want to invite you to come back and get comfortable and enjoy our upcoming presentation. And At this time, I'll invite our panelists to turn their microphones and their cameras off, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.